So you want to be a podcaster? Well, if you need some encouragement or discouragement, stay tuned. Hi, my name is Robert Gaines, and I am the host of the Free Time Mastermind podcast that you're currently watching. Statistically speaking, 80% of you watching this right now are not subscribed. And that's one of the first problems you're going to run into as a podcaster is you'll get views. You might even get comments if you're lucky. You get some engagement, but you need subscribers. Some people say that subscribers aren't that important. I still think that they are, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you watching this, you're not a subscriber. If you want to be a podcaster, you have to learn to start supporting other podcasters because you'll be stuck in that same position, staring at the camera like I am now, hoping the person watches subscribes. If you feel that this information is helpful to you, because I'm going to go over a lot of mistakes, some money I spent that I shouldn't have, and I'm going to really tell all. I'm going to probably throw a few people under the bus just to explain everything as much as I possibly can because I made some errors on the channel. As you can see, I don't have a massive number of subscribers, and we'll talk about why. So hang tight. The Free Time Mastermind podcast started, well, our first episode was uploaded March 27th of 2024. And the first person that I interviewed, because I knew from the beginning this was going to be a business entrepreneur oriented interview style podcast. I knew that going in. That was one of the few things that I had figured out before I even started. We knew we weren't exactly sure who the audience was going to be or who we were going to attract, but I knew I wanted to interview business owners and entrepreneurs. So the very first person I asked on was a personal friend of mine, Darren Maslach. He is a photographer in San Antonio. I lived in San Antonio for many, many years. He used to come out when I had the art gallery. He was very supportive. And although he'd been a photographer for a very long time, he had fairly recently relocated to San Antonio. So we were networking buddies too. So great guy. And he was a great first guest because he's got a lot of charisma. He's very funny, very beloved on Facebook. He's called the Dude with the Camera. And hopefully we can put some of his particulars in there. But anyway, if you go look at that very first episode, you'll see what a great guy he is. We actually brought him back. We had a few guests that were so good, we invited back a second time. He was involved in the anniversary episode, but I don't want to spoil too much of it. So we did 52 episodes in 52 weeks. And my first false assumption was that if I delivered one full interview video a week, the channel would grow. And I did that for months and did not see the needle move at all. And of course, it didn't take me long to get frustrated. Like everybody else, I want things to move pretty quickly. I didn't have dreams of monetization early on. And I actually said to my VA at the time, which we'll get into the virtual assistants too. I said to them, I said, look, I'm willing to run this thing out for 6 months and whatever it costs, as long as it's reasonable. I'm not looking for any return on this. I want to build, I want to grow the audience, which is unusual. Some people get in and after a week or two, they're like, where's the monetization? I thought going in that I had relatively low expectations, but I should have had them even lower, but let's talk about that. So at about probably the 6 month point, I can go back and look, I'm not sure, but I started to post shorts, and the shorts did get a lot of attention. They got a lot more attention than the 1 hour, because the interviews, if you look back, they're probably mostly kind of in the 42 to 47 minute range, although I often shot over an hour. I tried to select really good clips for the shorts that would pop and get attention. And they did get attention, but they didn't get engagement. There weren't any likes. There weren't any comments. I mean, if we did get them, it was very rare. And more importantly, it didn't drive any subscribers. Now, if you talk to the experts and the gurus on YouTube today, they'll tell you that subscribers aren't as important as they used to be. Well, I disagree. Maybe the experts know better than me, but I'll tell you this, why subscriber count matters for me is when you're asking someone to come on your show, if they're savvy, the very first thing they're going to look at is how many subscribers you have. So I've reached out to some people that I think I would have got along great with them. I think we would have had a great episode, but they looked at my channel, they looked at that low number of subscribers, and they said, you know what, this guy's not worth my time. So you get into this catch-22 where you hope you keep getting, if you're planning to do an interview show, style show, and I'll talk about the solo content that I've shot too. So if you don't want to interview people, that's fine. We've got some great information coming up for you as well. And so I would ask people to come in. One thing that helped get bigger guests on. And again, I knew this from the beginning, and I did a lot of strategizing before. The whole reason why the podcast got started is that I had launched a few months before, I had launched a mastermind group where entrepreneurs get together and discuss business. And it was a subscription, and I was going to monetize that, and that was going to be a stream of income for me. And I started creating content for that mastermind group because there's certain things that I know in depth really, really well. And instead of just repeating it every time somebody asked a question about it, I could direct them to this, what I thought was going to be a private YouTube channel. Once I got the technology and I got the webcam and I got the microphone and all that, I thought, well, I have everything here. Why not do a show? So have a interview style podcast. And also very early on, I got a virtual assistant, and Caitlin Chaparro was my first virtual assistant. She was fantastic. She was very organized. She set up an Excel sheet for the guests so we could see who we had invited, who had responded, and who was coming up. And that she had a lot of value to it. Unfortunately, I lost her to, she got a much bigger contract. She was really looking for a situation where um, this project would be her sole form of income. And I wasn't going to invest that kind of money into a podcast. And, we discussed that up front, but I supported her when she moved on, and hopefully I haven't heard from her in a little while, but she did great while she was here. And then I went through two other virtual assistants back to back that it didn't work out. And I think all parties involved knew that pretty quick. And then I met Caroline. Both Caitlin and Carolina I met on Upwork. I used to really like that platform. I need to correct that because I've had some issues with them lately. They're leaning too heavily on AI, and their customer service has gone down a lot. And I lost two good freelancers recently because of some decisions that Upwork made, not anything to do with my business model. But Caroline came out of the gate, did fantastic. I mean, she was, I think, initially doing thumbnails, and then she got involved in inviting people, and even was a host on two episodes in Spanish, which was pretty good, even though she speaks English probably better than me. But the reason why I wanted to bring up the VAs, one, I was working overtime when I launched the podcast. So I didn't have a lot of bandwidth, and I had a little extra money because I was working so much overtime. So I brought somebody in so that I didn't have to take so much precious time away from what little free time I had. So financially, it made sense. It was a tax write-off, no big deal. And the other thing about it, and this is the most important thing for you folks that want to have an interview style podcast, I knew, again, beforehand, I'll get into a lot of things I didn't know, but something I did understand from the beginning is if someone other than the host is contacting a potential guest, the organization looks very professional, and it looks even a little bigger if someone other than the host is reaching out via email. It adds a certain degree of professionalism to it. And we got a couple of people on very early that I thought it was going to take us months to work up to. But Caitlin had a very professional email. She had a signature block at the bottom with her photo. We had the logo branded. I mean, we were very serious. And of course, Caroline continued that tradition. We even went back in and revised the signature block and signature line and signature photo at the bottom of the email. So everything was very, very good looking and professional because we knew we were punching, batting outside of our league, trying to get these larger guests on, because I knew that I wanted everybody's story, but I knew if I wanted to grow the channel, I'd have to get at least a few people that have audiences themselves. And that was a real struggle, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I did start the podcast with a background in marketing, but that marketing knowledge was frozen in time because I hadn't been an entrepreneur. I'd stopped being an entrepreneur about a decade before I launched the podcast because I did a career change, and I was doing very well in the insurance industry as an adjuster, as a fraud investigator. I talk about that on several videos, so there's no need to go into it here. But a lot of the things that I knew about marketing, the principles of marketing never change. Advertising, the principles never change. Economics, the principles never change. But I was just out of touch with the technological part of it. And of course, Caitlin and Caroline, they helped get me up to par on the tech part. So as the mastermind group, and that's its own separate story, it didn't pan out the way that I had expected. So I started to put more energy into the podcast. And we got to the point where we had interviewed, I think, most of the easier people to get a hold of. And then it seemed like we started to spend more and more time chasing people down. Now, I've just recently joined a service called Podmatch. And there's a gentleman named Alex that I met on LinkedIn. And I apologize, I don't have his last name. But that looks like a pretty good service, a matchmaking service that is somewhat vetted so that you don't have to run around and chase people if you're looking for guests. Now, for you solo people, when I did solo episodes, for me personally, those were tougher because one, I had to write a script just like this one. I know you can't see what I'm looking at, but I do have somewhat of a sketch, a script for this episode. And then I'm going to have to edit it all myself. In an interview show, it's a little bit easier because you're not under pressure other than asking good questions and doing a good follow-up. Whereas with the solo, you're talking the whole time in the camera. So you've got to be very organized. Unless, I mean, if you have some kind of gift, maybe you don't have to be organized. But I think if you go in and you don't have a script, it's going to be pretty rough. Um, the solo episodes were much tougher for me. And unfortunately, people just didn't connect with my solo stuff as much. I did one about the economy where I made a lot of predictions that unfortunately and surprisingly, a lot of them came true. It was probably the most negative video that I shot. And people do have a taste for drama and things like that. And that's just the nature of human beings. But that episode did really, really well and was a was a pretty good predictor of what had happened. But I put a tremendous amount of work into that. And let's just say it takes 2 hours to shoot a 45-minute video. And that's just being on camera. So you're talking, let's say, for 2 hours, and then you're going to edit that down to 45 really good minutes because you're going to riff, you're going to go down rabbit holes, you're going to get off on subjects that you're going to have to go back in and cut it out. And I would say, too, you've got to make your videos as high impact as possible. People have a lot of options. They can get on X, they can get on YouTube, other people's channels, they can, listen to Spotify, they can go to other podcasts. So you have to really make your videos exciting. Doesn't matter your technology. I mean, I did hit it pretty hard. I had got a 1080p webcam, which was still pretty simple, but it was nicer than usually what people start off with. From an audio perspective, I started off pretty decent. I had a headset that was about $150 and very, very good quality, but it looked kind of strange. And I never wanted to wear headphones. I always thought that looked odd. So later I upgraded to in-ear monitors, which were another thing that's very expensive. But you don't have to do all that. If you do an interview-based podcast, you probably need a little bit better looking gear because it's going to be hard for you to get guests if it looks like amateur hour on your channel. So I wanted to have a professional appearance from the beginning so that I could attract good guests. But still, we kind of hit a wall on guests anyway because of the low subscriber count. But for solo information, for solo content, if you just want to put out how you feel about things, which I support, again, I think everybody should have a platform, and YouTube can be your platform. You just start a channel, open your phone, point it at your face, go live, hit record, do whatever. I support that. It's just going to be hard if you want to do that as an interview style. So if you're just trying to use YouTube as a digital diary, I think that's fantastic. And some people really connect with that. The other thing that I don't think enough people on YouTube talk about this, but I've got really good friends that'll troll me and roast me, and they know I like it. I can handle it. And somebody sent me a video of a woman who she was dressed in a very attractive way, and she was just cleaning her kitchen. That was it. She was just scrubbing but she was attractive. It was visually appealing. And that one short video got more views than my entire channel, everything together, the full length videos, the short, everything. And when you see something like that, it's very discouraging But people are really interested in things that grab their attention. Not everybody gets on YouTube to be educated. So if you're a highbrow, YouTuber and you want to deliver important educational information, it can be done. But the big mistake I made is I didn't have a niche. I wanted to talk to anybody. As long as they were running a business, I wanted to talk to them. And I still don't have a niche, even after all of these lessons that I've learned, because I would get bored if I had to talk about, because on LinkedIn, when I talk about AI, I get a lot of attention and it's very nice that that happens. But I don't want to be the AI guy and I don't want to talk about it every day. I want to talk about different things. I want to talk to entrepreneurs that are commercial fishermen and people who do digital agencies and the AI automation people. And I want all of it. And it's really hard to get an audience unless you're speaking to something that, let's say, pregnant mothers in their third trimester. If you're constantly speaking about a subject that's relevant to that group, you're going to do very, very well, especially if that subject is something that they're very much interested in. That's a lot easier. The other thing, and this is the part people won't talk about, and it goes back to the video they sent me to troll me. If you're a very attractive person, you'll do very well. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. You're going to get views. You're going to get subscribers if you're really good looking. If you look like me, it's not, no, everything else has to be perfect. If you don't have Hollywood style looks and extreme charisma, then everything else has to be in place. The video should probably look good. The audio should probably look good. And as you can see, I've got a nice microphone upgraded to an SM7DB. The camera is now a 4K. I'm shooting in 4K, even though it's not going to upload to YouTube as 4K. And this is a Canon R50, very, very high-end camera for a podcaster. And but I also have it for other reasons too, for other business purposes. So the purchase made sense to me. And I'm inside a room that's been converted to a studio. It's acoustically treated. I've got two monster lights baking me like a turkey. I've got lights behind me separating me from the green. There's a big green screen behind me that you can't see. Yeah, I mean, this is about as pro as it gets. And I've got studio quality monitors here for the playback and a big screen that's big enough to cook me. You don't have to do all that. Like I said, if you're just trying to get your message out to the world and you've got something unique that you want to share, especially like I really love the digital diary format of YouTubers. So you could just pick up your phone and point it at your face and start talking. And I see some YouTubers that are very popular. They do talk within a niche and they just go out on walks and they film the subject while they're in their walks. There's at least two YouTubers that I'm big fans of. They shoot in their car, clearly from a smartphone. And I love their content, but they have niches. One guy talks about a very specific aspect of the economy, and another person talks about a very specific part of science. So they can get away with that. If you have a niche, you can get away with a lot of things. If you're beautiful and charismatic, you can get away with a lot of things. Again, if you look like me, you're gonna have to work hard. You're gonna have scripts. And so let's talk about the tech stack real quick. I do think if you have an interview style, it really helps to have somebody help you to have another email address. I had a branded email address. My URL is freetimemastermind.com. So when Caroline sends out email invitations for the podcast, it's km@freetimemastermind.com. It's that email's branded. My email is branded. But let's talk about tech stack. The two things that I started with that I still use that I think are very, very good is I have the paid version of Zoom. The free one, the problem with that is I think it's limited to one guest and you can't go over an hour. Don't quote me on that. Look that up. But free, it's still, if you're going to do something short, you can use Zoom, and Zoom allows you to go live on YouTube, which is great. Zoom allows you to go live on Facebook as well. You can't do both at the same time. The second thing that we had was Calendly, which I still have. I still pay for that subscription. And you can book your guests that way and it sends reminders. And I also use the Calendly for the disclaimer. So if you have guests, you need a disclaimer. You don't think you can get sued doing something silly like YouTube? Look at the episode with where I interviewed Colleen McLafferty. One of my favorite episodes, by the way. She's just a dynamite lady who went through this crazy experience that no person should have to go through over, basically a legal technicality. So I have my Calendly has things that people have to agree to and check on. And then when the Zoom pops up and they join the meeting, there's another thing they have to agree to and check on. So it would be very difficult for somebody to sue me because they basically go through two levels of disclaimers. A lot of people, if you're a hotshot YouTuber, usually the first thing they get rid of is Zoom, and then they'll go to something where you can have either more guests or you can transmit to more websites simultaneously. Now I have the first tier paid version of Zoom. So I can have up to 100 people inside of the meeting. I can go more than an hour. I forget what the limit is, but it's a long, I mean, I think I could shoot for 23 hours or something. And so the Zoom paid is very good. Zoom does have its own calendar as an add-on service. I don't recommend it because the difference between Calendly, the big difference for me between Zoom and between Calendly, I can set a calendar time and date for someone for a phone call or for a Microsoft meeting or face-to-face meeting. Whereas Zoom, unfortunately, the only thing the Zoom calendar does is book Zoom meetings. So Calendly, I think is way better. I can't think of any reason why the Zoom alone calendar would be better in any situation. I think Calendly is the way to go. And I think Calendly has a free version, and I'm not sure about it, but I have the paid version, and I've never hit any limitation with it and very happy with it. So then when I started doing shorts, Javon Winston had edited my videos almost from the very beginning. I think he started on episode 2 or episode 3. Great guy, easy to work with. He's on Upwork. You can look him up, Javon Winston. If you look at all the older videos, I usually put his name and a link to him. Same thing with Caroline if you're interested in working with them. So let's recap. I was paying a subscription for Zoom. I was paying a subscription for Calendly. I was paying Javon to edit the episodes, and I was paying Caroline to book the talent, and she was sometimes making thumbnails too. And they did a great job. The channel didn't grow, but that's my fault, not theirs. I really resisted in the beginning where people would say that you need to spend 80% of your time thinking about your thumbnail and 20% of your time on your content. And that really frustrated me, but it's true. It's very unfortunate. It's true. So I shot from March 27th, 2024 to April 23, 2025. So that was 52 episodes in about 52 weeks. 47 of those episodes, I interviewed one or more people, and then I did 5 solo episodes. And then I've just rebooted the channel a little bit more than a week ago. A lot more emphasis on thumbnails. Right now, I'm having vidIQ do the thumbnails, and I have the first paid tier of the vidIQ as well. So what's the difference between all of that? Oh, and so to jump back, at the 6-month point of having the channel, I started to push the shorts out there. I did mention that, but I was doing those. Javon was not creating the shorts. I thought I can do that, and I used Descript for that. I still have the Descript subscription. I have the paid version. That's a good one. Another thing that I paid for was I can't think of the name of it, but where Javon and I could transfer. It was called WeTransfer.com. It's so we could, sometimes we had a few episodes that were over a gig, really gigantic amount of data. I wasn't always clear as to why some episodes were bigger than others, but some went over a gig. So I had to have a paid service for that too. So that's a lot of money going out. And at the 6-month point, I started cranking out shorts, which again, they were getting a lot of views. We weren't picking up any subscribers, and we weren't getting any comments. The reason why the comments are important is it helps you know what's working and what's not working. The likes also help you know what's working and what's not working. And that's part of the reason why I don't formally run the mastermind group in the organized way it was before. We spent a ton of money on marketing and never got enough data to know what was working and what wasn't. And same thing with my channel in general. You have to get a lot of views and a lot of attention to figure out what's working and what's not. So I'm currently shooting every day now. And what I'm doing is for now, every other day, I'm shooting live one day, completely, well, not unscripted, but I'm going in live, no edits, straight from video onto YouTube. So it's a minute or two behind. I'm encouraging people to get on with me. I send those links to LinkedIn and to Facebook, letting people know that I'm about to go live. That's doing okay. And then on the other alternating days, I am doing a video like this where I have a script, I pre-prepare, I go down through a series of steps, cover all of this material, and then I'm going to go back in and edit it and try to make it a little bit more interesting. And it's a lot of work. I'd say at least 2 hours of editing for every hour of video, because I go through and I'm eliminating all the ums and ahs and pauses, and you have to make that video really exciting. Again, if you're beautiful or you're a compelling storyteller, you don't have to go through all this. But I'll tell you, the audience is never wrong. I can think what I'm doing it has a lot of value, but if I'm not paying attention to the fundamentals, the thumbnail, and I still don't have that mastered, but I'm putting a lot more effort into the thumbnail than I used to. I'm never going to do the 80-20%. I'm not that guy. There's only a certain level of effort that I'm willing to go. I don't want to spend 2 hours thinking about the thumbnail. That steals my joy, and I don't want to be a podcaster if that's what the future is. Or I could just keep doing it without thumbnails and just be happy with the fact that the audience is never going to grow. And with the amount of shorts that went out, I started what I did then when the shorts were coming out is I would still post an interview episode every week. So that's one day of the week covered. That would be the only content. The other 6 days of the week, I'd try to pull 6 shorts from a previous episode and drop those shorts so that I had at least some kind of video dripped content coming out every day, 7 days a week. And we got a little bit of a bump, but it didn't, considering the amount of effort it took, it didn't pay back in that equal amount of effort back. So it was at least 5 times, 6 times the content output, but not 6 times the return. I think we probably saw about a 15% bump in subscribers when we were putting stuff out. And then that's when I got introduced to Gary Vaynerchuk, who's, you want to get discouraged. He's saying, you need to put out 5 pieces of content per day per platform. And I mean, it's unreal. And I do think if you do that much activity, there is truth in that, because after that, if you're pushing out that much content, you're going to become very good, very quick. You're going to have a lot of data. So anybody who's taken any statistic classes, you know that the larger the sample size, the better the data. So I know now a lot better about asking questions during an interview. I know better about engaging on camera. I'm not saying I'm great or anything, but I know a lot more than I did before March 27th, 2024. And you see podcasters over time, I think like Chris Williamson, their style starts to get better and better, and they really get people to open up and things come out. So if you're an interview style podcaster, I would encourage you to get some books on asking questions. Could be books by journalists, or there's just other books about asking questions. That's really, really important. So I did talk about the tech stack already. I did eventually, very recently, upgrade the video when I decided to narrate my own audiobook for Scintilla, the ultimate guide to generating business ideas, products and service ideas. That's when I got the SM7 DB microphone, which is fantastic. It fits my voice very well, makes my voice sound very good, very raspy, very low, as it sounds in real life. And I narrated the audiobook with this, so I was able to justify that expense, take it off on taxes, because I did produce a product with it. And that's it. So the channel never did grow the way I expected, and I just did this relaunch. I'm always open about what my intentions are. I think we do so much better when people are just open about what they want and what they're after. I enjoy writing way more than I expected. So I'm now about a month away from re-releasing my first book, the second edition of my first book, Scintilla. And I'm halfway through a manuscript that I'm writing on LinkedIn, which I couldn't believe. I'm just really surprised that book has gone so fast. And I just discussed with somebody tonight about potentially the book project that's going to come after LinkedIn, which I'm even more excited. So why am I still podcasting? Well, I still have something to offer, and I still want the platform. And all this equipment, even if my own channel doesn't take off, now that I'm on podmatch.com, I'm going to be appearing on other people's podcasts. Because, hey, look, getting on a podcast, especially if that podcast has a pretty decent audience, that's some of the best organic marketing you can do. Yes, I do believe you should follow Gary Vaynerchuk. Yes, I think you should get, what is it, Jab, 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 Punch. That's a great book. And Day Trading Attention. You should definitely have those books. Get Influenced by Robert Cialdini, because it'll help you appeal to people. It'll help you appeal to audiences. And although I haven't been great at it on my channel, I am going to keep this going to give these books the best chance to get promoted, because I don't only want to sell books. I also want to get email addresses, so that way when book 3, book 4, whatever I do later on, I can stay in touch with people. Subscribers come and go. Somebody can unsubscribe and they disappear and you don't know who they are, and because they used a weird screen name. But I like having people's emails and doing the email list. So if you're asking, like a lot of people do, because I'm in a lot of, or I used to be in a lot of podcaster groups on Facebook, and people would be podcasting for a week and they'd say, how do I monetize my channel? And you can, there's plenty of information about that out there. You won't necessarily need to get that from me as far as how many subscribers, how many watch hours, all of that changes. But what I'll tell you is, if you're constantly out there and you're constantly pushing up information, you're going to have a better chance if you're constantly uploading. And if you're appearing on other people's podcasts, that's going to help you too. And it doesn't matter if you don't have a product or service to sell. At least I have a book, so to speak. Well, when the new one comes up, I'll have a new book to hold up. But I have something to promote. I want email addresses and I want to sell books. That's my two things. I'm not trying to do 20 different things. So for those of you that that are doing the podcasting for the money, and maybe you have your hands on a lot of fingers in a lot of different pies. All right, so let's get into some of the dark stuff. I'll tell you, the first thing I thought when I started booking guests is that a lot of people were going to flake out, or they were going to show up late. Two things that really upset me. Uh, I've said in prior videos, I've worked with artists across several businesses. So I'm used to people being, not taking my time seriously. I'm from the business world, so I show up early, and if somebody else isn't there early, I'm thinking, if you're not early, you're late. And so I'm from that philosophy. But I have to tell you, these people showed up. The guests were great. A lot of them either showed up on time or a few minutes early, which was always a relief. There was one person that forgot to show up for their pre-interview, and I didn't like how they responded about it. They tried to blame it on Calendly, which there was nothing wrong with Calendly. They just didn't want to accept personal responsibility. And this is an entrepreneurship channel. So if this person couldn't take ownership over this relatively simple situation, so I decided not to have them on. And then another person came on. We recorded the full interview, and it was about halfway through, it got really strange. Now, I was a fraud investigator for a major insurance carrier, and I don't do these interviews like interrogations. You can go back and look. I'm smiling all the time. I'm very, very friendly. And this person presented themselves as an expert in a particular topic. And I was just asking what I would think was pretty, I did read up on it. I always look up the guest and try to be respectful and understand what they're doing in their background. And so I was asking, I think, pretty elementary questions that anybody that says they're an expert in a subject would know. Well, I immediately got a lot of extreme evasiveness over basic questions. It'd be like, well, how do you drive? Do you open the passenger door and get in that way? And if, they couldn't answer that level of question, it was like, oh, what's going on? So I think about 3/4 of the way in, I realized they had no idea what they were talking about, and I don't know why they would call themselves an expert. So I switched on the investigator part of my brain and started asking some real, like, much deeper questions. And it made them very uncomfortable, because I was just trying to figure out, are they having a bad day, or are they lying to me? Are they wasting my time? And about an hour after the interview was over, I started getting this flurry of emails threatening me that I better not, because I didn't say anything to embarrass them, but I got more persistent about my questions. And it really just uncovered that they didn't know what they were talking about. And they threatened me if I had released it. Now they signed a series of like I said, they went through two series of disclaimers and releases. So legally, it was bulletproof. But I'm not here to embarrass anybody. And the episode would have been terrible anyway because they didn't know what they were talking about. So I don't know why they feared. So that was a waste of time. And that episode never saw the light of day. I've never discussed that episode until now. I've alluded to it in a few prior ones, but I know that person monitored my channel for a very, very, very long time to see if I was going to put that. Put that episode out, which is very egotistical of them because their interview was terrible. Um, I would say the thing that is most shocking about running a YouTube channel, especially if it's interview style, are the number of people that came on that were pretty good guests. I mean, they put some effort into it, but they never subscribed to the channel. They didn't interact in any meaningful way on their own video. They didn't like their own video. They didn't make a comment. And it's not like we're not talking about liking your own Facebook status, which I think is very strange, or liking your own social media post. No, this is an interview where you were in someone else's house, so to speak. And you would think, I mean, every time I'm on all I know is how I behave when I'm on somebody else's podcast. If I'm a guest, I'm going to promote the episode as far in advance as I can if I know what the date is. And my guests always knew what date it was going to air. They always knew what time because our episodes always dropped at the same time and on the same day of the week. So they had plenty of time to promote it. And I promote the heck out of any episode that I'm on. I make sure that I subscribe to their channel. I click like and I make comments. And the number of people that came on my channel that didn't make any effort. I mean, they came and spent all that time to talk to me and they didn't do anything to promote that. And I could tell by the numbers. And if you're thinking about being a guest on another channel, something that you should think about is you've got to let the host in and talk every now and then. Those that have known me that are watching this, that have known me for a long time, as you can tell, I can sit and talk for a very long time and not have to take a breath hardly. I don't do that when I'm a host, and I don't do that when I'm a guest. I have to switch that part of my brain off. I'm in a different environment. But I did have a guest, and that episode is still up. And if you look at it, if you look through them, you could probably figure out which one this is that in. Um, I asked a couple simple questions. I threw some softball questions in the beginning, and they gave some really long, complex answers to some really simple questions that were on the verge of yes or no. So I had this sense that I was going to have problems with them with brevity, and it makes everything harder. Nobody wants to watch content like that. Number one, and number two, it makes editing very, very hard. And so I didn't warn them per se, but I did say, and that's funny, I almost accidentally said their name, but I did say to them, I said, if you don't mind, just be aware of the length of your answers. I said, trust me in the process. I'm good at follow-up questions. Just kind of answer directly the question in as few words as possible. And then I'll start to tease out other details with follow-up questions. And I said, we'll get that story so that it's more you speak, I speak. It's a little bit more interactive instead of it being a monologue. And I said that very nice, very respectfully. And the next question I ask, and I promise you, they talked for 23 minutes. And they could see me on camera. And I did everything I could with my body language. They were just completely unaware. And I don't know if they were going through something or because we're able to get the episode and it went over an hour, but it's one of the shortest episodes because we couldn't edit it. We can't have somebody on camera talking for 23 minutes unless it's a situation like this where I'm specifically delivering information that you come in knowing you're going to hear about. This person was talking about nothing for 23 minutes. Just answer the question. It's very simple. So if you're a guest, just answer the question. Now, if you've got a really great story that kills every time you go to the barbecue and you tell this story, everybody, yeah, drop that story. But a podcast is not a place to meander like you're in a therapist's office. And thankfully, I think experiencing that myself made me a better guest. And so I'm much more quick to kind of rein in what I'm about to say, and I'll wrap it up real quick. I'll kind of catch myself going over, and then I'll stop and I'll wrap it up really quick. So I'm not mad at that person that showed up. I think they were very surprised how short the episode was when it aired. But I've got to be on camera a little bit. It is an interview, so I didn't get to say very much. I think I only got to speak maybe 5 times in an hour, and I even let it roll extra, thinking we'll get a part where they'll give me a short answer. And I think I maybe was on camera 5 times in an hour and 20 minutes. So yeah, pretty scary. But all in all, I mean, that was an extreme example. And that was one of my least favorite interviews, other than the one that didn't air at all. But back to what I was talking about. I think anytime someone behaves in a way that's counter to their own interest always shocks me. So I always behave in my own self-interest in a way as long as it doesn't interfere with somebody else's self-interest. And I always try to be respectful. So that's why when I'm a guest, I promote the episode before and after. I make comments. I try to stay in touch with people. And one thing that's tough for me, and I didn't think I was a sensitive guy, but I had a few interviews with some people that I felt like we really connected. And then I tried to keep up with them after the interview, and they had, that was the end of our interaction, was the video. And that's okay. I'm much better about it now. But the first couple of times it happened, it kind of hurt, because I thought, wow, we had a magical hour. We laughed. We're having this great experience, and you would think you'd want to, at least stay in touch with that person. And I'm not a high maintenance person, hey, how you doing? Checking in or whatever. And if somebody doesn't respond, I'm very quick now that if there's not some energy coming back or some reciprocity, I don't waste any more time. But I had to learn that lesson. There's been some great people that came on. Robert Lane, great guy. He's a audiobook coach. So if you're going to do a book, definitely do an audiobook. Definitely get a coach. He's an audio engineer. He's a dynamite musician. Anyway, the point about Robert, and I've mentioned him in several other videos, is he's a real advocate for the channel. He's an advocate for what I do on Facebook, and vice versa. I support him. I bring him up on camera. He's got a great book out. Obviously, he's got the audiobook version too. I think it's called Lights, Camera, Action, You. So he worked out there in Hollywood for a while, LA, and part of that whole scene. He's got great stories. And he's very active on social media. He's very supportive of me, and I'm very supportive of him. And he was a great guest. I also had the privilege to interview famous hypnotist Jim Kellner. And wow, amazing guy. We hit it off. I immediately liked this guy. And it's funny, the first 7 minutes of the interview, he was very guarded, and I thought, oh man, I don't know how this is going to go. Because if you go back and watch the episode, he was kind of closed, his arms folded. And then we got going, and I opened up, which is easy for me to do. I'm not very shy. And he got going, and then he got really funny, and then and it was a great episode. And we stayed in contact with each other. Amazing guy. I felt so privileged to know him. And then I'm gonna have a hard time explaining this part, but it's been almost a year, so I didn't know he was sick at the time, but he had some kind of, I don't know the whole situation, but it was some kind of flu-like symptom. And I was talking to him, I think the 23rd of December last year. Short conversation, but just funny as always. And he died the next day. I think, and both him and his wife, they didn't know how bad sick he was. I think he'd only been sick for a couple of days, and he was in bed, and he thought it was going to go away, and whatever it was. And again, I don't have all the details and wouldn't share them even if I did know them, but he was gone. He was gone. And I'm so grateful. And I mentioned him in my anniversary episode, which I'll talk more about in a moment. But my life was so much better that Jim Kellner was in it. And I do miss the guy. I do. He was a great guest, and that's another reason to have an interview style podcast and have people on. Another thing too, If you were to just call somebody out of the blue, then you didn't have a podcast and say, "Hey, I'm Robert Gaines. I want to talk to you about your business. I want to hear your story." People would hang the phone up and what are you talking about? But the moment you say, "I have a podcast," that opens the door. You have a platform, and people that wouldn't talk to you otherwise would are receptive. So that's another magic of having a YouTube channel, having a platform, having an interview show. But yeah, you get to meet some great people, and there are several guests that I still talk to regularly. But again, the ones that just had no further contact, didn't click like on their own video, didn't promote their own video. I got really excited for one video, and the guest was really excited, and we were gonna, um, really get some stuff going. And I've had other people on that I know from talking to them before the camera went on that they were struggling in their business, and they needed that promotion. They needed that episode to do very well, and yet they didn't even. Some of them I have access to their socials. They didn't even put the episode up, you know. I went back and looked at those videos thinking to myself, was it just not edited right? Or did they not like how it came out? And I'm anything that was that bad wouldn't go out. And there was only that one video and that would have been terrible. I would have never put it out there anyway. But yeah, it just shocks me. And then another one that was positively memorable was yeah, guest Chris M. Walker. He's from Legit. He's an SEO specialist. Now he was tough to interview. I have to be honest because sometimes when I'm being interviewed, if somebody says something that isn't exactly correct, I tend to let it slide because why bring it up? But he pushed back on a couple of things, and I was surprised. Things that I probably would have let fly. Maybe I wasn't explaining something exactly correct, but he was pretty tough on me, which was good. I'd never had a guest do that before, but he knows what he's doing, and he's a very confident guy, and he runs a very successful business. So I'm not surprised, but I still love the interview. I think of it fondly, and so did he. The other thing that he did, and that proves what a great guy he is, he sent an army of people. He passed that link out to everybody in his circle, and he's got a pretty big circle. So that view, I'm looking at it now. It got the most, I think the most views, if I'm not mistaken. It's in the top three views of any interview that I conducted on there. And that's because of Chris's effort. The episode itself is good, but without his effort, it wouldn't have done that. So he was a really great collaborative guest as far as the promotion. I had a guy that was on the Australian version of Shark Tank, and a great guy, a lot of personality. And I wanted to mention too that I also had Chris Feistel, who his character was portrayed in the show Narcos, and they had a book recently come out about how they took down the Cali cartel. Great guy. I would say prominence wise, he's probably the most, as far as a public persona, the most famous person I had on. And he's been a great guy. He's still supportive of my social media too, and very generous of him because he's got bigger and better things to do than to click like on my Facebook post. But he's very supportive, a great guy. If you stay in the game long enough, and then here's ultimately the message, you just need a few Robert Lanes, a few Mike Dries. My friend Mike Dries supports the stuff that I do. Chris Feistel, um, and even Chris Walker still interactive on some of my stuff. I'm a subscriber to his, but you need other people. You have to help other people. And sometimes they'll help you, sometimes not, but you have to give, and then reward the people that are really helping you. So I'm not saying don't do it, don't have a podcast, but just lower your expectations. I hope you do a lot better than I did. I'm doing not a rebranding, but I'm resurrecting the channel because it was inactive from whatever date I said. That was the last one we shot. Last interview went up April 23rd of 2025, and then we just put our first episode up about a week ago. And that's it. If you have any questions about my tech stack, what I've done to this room, how I invited people, my disclaimers. I'm willing to share anything. There's no secrets. I want this to be easier for you than it was for me because I'm still in the hard phase. So there's things that I can't teach you in this video, like how to get a bunch of followers. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to spend 80% of my time on those thumbnails, but I'm doing everything else within reason. And I've got a big tech stack now. I've got vidIQ helping me with my wording of the titles. vidIQ is helping me with the description. vidIQ is helping me with the keywords. I've got the paid version of ChatGPT helping me with research. I mean, as far as the money, I'm investing the money. But now I would be happy just to get enough attention to sell some books. But hey, would I like to have a channel with 100,000 subscribers? Absolutely. So that gets back to what I said at the very beginning. I'll say it now at the end. 80% of you watching this right now are not subscribed to this channel. And if you become a creator, you're going to be begging, hoping that the person that just sat through that whole video that you spent hours planning, researching, shooting, and then editing, and all you want is them to click the thumbs up. That's it. That's all you, after hours of research, all you're asking is for them to click the thumbs up or to subscribe. So you put in a lot of work and you're asking for this tiniest thing, and 8 out of 10 people won't do it. But you're doing this for the 20% that will.